Dave Calhoun, the Boeing CEO, sitting down with Bloomberg's Guy Johnson, a conversation you want to tune into. Let's take a listen.
Recently. You've obviously had a series of safety incidents that have put you back. Yep. You're seeing that reflected in the financials. You are now on a journey to change the culture of the business, to put the financials back on a more even keel. We see this day in and day out. Give me a sense of the timeline you're working with here. How long is this process gonna take?
First of all, the best answer to the question is it's going to take as long as it's going to take.
Yep.
And one of the flaws any of us can get into is to predict that moment. But I can predict circumstances that will define those moments. Everybody knows when this started. It was with a couple of horrific accidents where lives were lost. A company at that moment in time had a very difficult experience. What I call the lack of transparency, the unwillingness to take responsibility immediately. And I've been candid about that. I believe transparency of all things and relative to all cultures is about the most powerful word I've ever seen. Any company, especially large-scale companies who are willing to be transparent about everything, they'll suffer less. Because the minute you start to hide something in a big company, others notice and they might hide. And I'm not suggesting there was nefarious or anything of the sort. But transparency is like the most critical thing in the world. And when we started this, what I call the recovery moment, which was beginning of 2020, we made wholesale changes to the leadership team. We made began wholesale changes to the board. We stopped production of the MAX, 100%. So we went a full year and a month without producing a single airplane. Created a safety office based on lots of experiences that the FAA had working directly with airlines. Ironically, they mandated a safety management system for airlines, but not yet for the manufacturers or the supply chain in the industry. So we decided we would take that, we would learn everything that we could, create a safety office, and most importantly in that is stay tuned to the fleet, know what it's doing every day, all day, and then be transparent about everything you see and get good at that. So take that forward. And this is where I'll start to approach the experience we had with Alaska Airlines, which was the depressurization event and the escape of the door. So our supply chain and ourselves started production in the first month of 2021 from a rate of 0. And a workforce, while we hadn't laid it off, we had moved it to a whole variety of places around our factories, and then we had to move them back and remobilize all of that effort. At the same time, I haven't even mentioned COVID. That happened. So demand for airplanes fell precipitously, we know that. It also shut down our 2 factories because the first case in the US was right between them, literally. So we had a moment that's hard to describe, but then we had to begin the mobilization. And I would agree with everything Guillaume said about the supply chain and the ramifications of COVID on the supply chain. The turnover of experienced people, the loss of really important skills, and them coming back in a much slower and maybe a bigger word, sporadic pace than any of us had hoped for. Maybe we should have expected it, but at least we were hoping for better than that. So for 21 and 22 and 23, we were gradually bringing up the rates. Demand for airplanes came back faster than any of us ever imagined it would, and it came back in a robust way. We were increasing our rates, but a little bit of an issue began to arise. You may know, when nonconformance gets to your factory and you have the capability to fix it, you do. And you can do one of those and you do 2 of those, but when it starts to overwhelm the positions in your factory and you're doing more and more of that kind of work, or simply trying to accommodate a part that didn't show up.
Yeah.
Didn't show up when it was supposed to be in position 2, let's do it in position 4. So this happens and it migrates into the factory. And I will say, while it was not the specific cause to Alaska, In my view, it was the systemic cause. It was the issue that created the opportunity, a little bad behavior without a doubt on the part of somebody who we don't know yet, but it created an opportunity in the last position of a factory to then allow for an escape, which we are not allowed to do and never will be allowed to do. So that was sort of a short story of a long set of issues. But what do you do when this stuff happens? This is what I love about the industry, just for what it's worth. 1989, United Airlines lost aircraft in Sioux City, Iowa, and there were many fatalities. I was at GE. It was a total moment for GE on the subject of safety, a complete overhaul of the business, the company, its approach to engineering, the maturity of design practices, and the allegiance to the skills that are required to perfect and mature a design practice. Lots of details, but it was an overhaul of the entire company. And I also remember when I came in as CEO at the end of the next decade, the 1990s, it's like it happened yesterday. Every employee remembered it, they understood it. Their commitment design practices always started with a brief discussion on what happened in Sioux City.
Yep.
That's going to be us. That's going to be us. And I don't know exactly when that moment is when we're starting to feel really stable. I think in the engineering world and our commitment in the design space, human factors, all the things that led to the real tragedies at Lion Air and in Ethiopia, I believe that those fixes are in place, and now we're maturing, and we don't forget. And now I think in this Alaska moment and the escape that we got from our factory, I think the comprehensiveness of our plan, our willingness to take responsibility in the first instance, sent a clear message to all of our company that transparency will be paramount in this process. We presented this comprehensive plan to our regulator. Here's one thing I want to make sure everybody understands. This is our plan, it's not our regulator's plan. This is our plan, it's not our regulator's plan. They will provide oversight like they do, and they will regulate us, but it has to be us. We got to believe in it. We got to love it. We got to want to do it. And we got to take the pain that goes with slowing down the factory. We got to take the pain. And if we slow it down and stick to the disciplines that will synchronize this supply chain with the insatiable demand for airplanes and stay disciplined on that, we will put all this in a rearview mirror, and we will be way better for it. And there will be a moment later in life where someone will look back and say, this may have been the most important moment in Boeing's life.
So what advice do you give to your successor? What kind of person does that successor need to be? You just laid out what needs to happen. What kind of person is going to be delivering that kind of plan? What kind of person would you like to see? What kind of person needs to be in your chair to do what you've just described?
Again, I'll just start with the word transparency. You just can't blink for a minute. There are no
But is it an
moments.
external candidate? Is it an internal?
Yeah, no, Guy, well, I'm not going there. So we can go anywhere you want, but we're not going there. I will just tell you this. It'll be a deliberate process. It is.
Yep.
It has been thought through. They will get to a conclusion. It'll be a great one, and I'll be the most supportive player on the field.
But it's going to be an ongoing journey. This is not something that's going to be completed easily or quickly. What you've just described is something that happened over many years. Like, how symmetrical?
It's been, again, you're getting way too into this one. This process and the thought process around what it takes and what it is, who it is. And remember, I'm 67 going on 68. This is not like we woke up and here, let's go do it. It's a methodical, it'll be well done, and it'll be well articulated, and it'll be timely.
And Boeing will be a different company as a result of it? Or
it is. Yeah. It is a different company. If I didn't believe that, I wouldn't go. Everything that we've put in place, our commitment to transparency, the extent to which we practiced it post-Alaska, the extent to which we practiced it post-Alaska, in full visibility to every interest that had been surrounding us for the last 5 years, made a difference. And it will continue to make a difference. And I believe anybody, and by the way, our board now is educated on what it means, anybody who comes into this role has to start with that thought process, that notion. And the rest of these initiatives and efforts, in my view, that'll be, the momentum's there, it'll continue. And if I always give somebody a warning sign, it's pace. It's the first question,
Take your time.
First question you ask me. When is it going to be done? Well, it's going to be done when it's going to be done. And be patient and keep the supply chain synchronized.
Are there metrics we should look out for? Are there metrics, milestones that we should think about?
We posted the metrics that we're looking at. So they're transparent for everybody, transparent for our regulator. So yes, and what those metrics are meant to represent in a factory is stability.
How important is Boeing to America?
I believe it's the most important company in the world, and I'm not objective. But here's the thing. Our mission is to protect, connect, and explore the world. And just think for a second about each of those, and how important they are to the world, and particularly now. I loved Guillaume's answer to the question on, do we need 4 or 5 more competitors? We need 2 great ones. And yeah, there will be a third.
Do we have 2 great ones?
There will be a third.
Do we have 2 great ones now?
Of course we do. Of course we do.
Okay.
Of course we do. We take off and land every second of every day. Every second of every day. We deliver safe airplanes. This is, in my view, no question about that. But just stop for a minute. There's 2 guys that do this, connect. The protect, which nobody really talks about with respect to Boeing, and the work that we do for our US military, and now way more importantly as we move forward, the growing work we do for the allied forces around the world who are all contending with new threats. That's a whole new, it's not a whole new opportunity, but it is an opportunity that is getting all the emphasis that it could possibly be getting. And as long as we continue to develop products that are relevant to those new threats, we'll be in a great place.
In terms of, let's just circle back a little bit. Do we need is there an engineering quality that you need to run this company? Do you need to get your hands dirty and understand what is happening on the shop floor? Is that ultimately
well, if the answer, if you're directing that at me like every popular media
No, I'm not. I'm wondering what, really what I'm asking you is the successor question. Is this an engineering problem? Is this a talent problem? Is it a...
It's no one problem. The engineering talents in our company are enormous.
Yep.
I've been hanging around a lot of engineering companies and interests for a long time.
You have.
I've never seen one with more breadth and more skill in my life. It has to be organized. It has to be applied in a disciplined way. With respect to a successor, they're not going to engineer anything. If they engineer something, that's when we should all run for the hills.
Okay.
Right? So they have to be keenly aware of where the engineering expertise lies and to make sure it's supported in every way it can be. And that it gets the last vote on everything. And it gets the last vote on everything. So that's what you do. Manufacturing processes, do I have to assemble airplanes? Does my successor need to assemble airplanes? No. Does it need to know the factory's stable? Does it have to have the metrics in place that provide for that? Does it have to have the resident skills and proficiencies in place to make sure that's the case? The answer is yes. And there is all of that. It has to be organized. We got a wake-up call to do it even better, and that's what we do. We just focus on it and just do it.
Again, coming back to the point you raised about competition, this is a point of disruption, though, in the industry. I'd come back to the sustainability question. This is a point of disruption in the industry. If Boeing's looking that way, is it going to be distracted from the disruption that is taking place in this industry, potentially? Are you, by having to go through this process, leaving yourself open to the disruption we've seen in the EV sector? You've only got to look at what's happening here in Europe with the car industry. There are others that are interested in what you do and want to do it better. Yeah. How do you make sure that doesn't happen?
Well, what we did, and of the things I'm very confident in, is what we did is we sustained all of the major technology research programs and development programs related to the technologies we think play on the next platform. All of these have to be developed, tested, matured before you can actually design an airplane that incorporates it.
Yep.
And that's a lesson all of us have learned who have ever developed an airplane. Make sure you take the time to mature those things. But I feel very good about the portfolio of capabilities that we will bring to that airplane. Very good about it. And again, you take the time to make sure they're mature and ready. And there will be some significant changes as we go forward. Yes, efficiency is the one that we all talk about, but I think autonomy is another one that everybody should talk more about. It doesn't mean pilotless. It just means autonomy capable.
Okay, let's just think about that for a moment. We're struggling to certify derivatives of current aircraft. What do you think the regulators are going to think about? How much of a lag is there going to be in new airplanes coming to market? When do you think you're going to be? This is the question that you're not going to answer.
Yeah, exactly.
But let's assume that it's within the next 10 years. How long? Let's say it's 10 years from now.
Yep.
How long would it take to certify that airplane? And is that how much of a slowdown in the process is that going to mean?
Yeah, I can't predict that. I will say this: we are an applicant for an autonomous civil vehicle with our small air taxi called Whisk.
Yep.
We're an applicant, and that means that the regulator has accepted the application, and that means they're organizing themselves to certify autonomy and to develop an approach that they can codify. And it's one of the big reasons that we're invested in Whisk. It's one of the big reasons, and I have a lot of confidence that that airplane will not only hit the market, but it will be deemed safe, and it will demonstrate that.
You talked before about how important Boeing is to America and to the world, but let me ask you a question. We're going to have an election in November. What do you want to see from the next administration? What does Boeing want to see from the next administration? Yeah, well, everybody knows, I think, we're a company that relies on trade. Free trade to us will always be sort of first on the list of desires. I'll be the first to acknowledge that that seems to be going in the wrong direction and has been for quite some time. You worried?
Yeah, I'm worried. I'm worried that the ramifications of isolation are going to, I don't want to overstate the word, but they're going to bring down economies. They just are. They just are. Now, I happen to be in an industry because choices are limited and because needs are great. It probably won't hit me first, but I worry about isolation with respect to the economic ramifications for lots of countries and lots of people. And isolation then breeds disenchantment, and disenchantment ultimately breeds political turnover. So that's the world I worry about with respect to isolation, and I don't like any of the signs I see.
Okay. How does that change the way you think about the way that Boeing's going to operate?
We're going to run hard, continue to build the world's best airplane, and then we're going to compete. And I'm going to lobby every day, all day for free trade. Does it stop this? Does it stop the sustainability story? Does cooperation? No.
I've heard building bridges a number of times today. What you're describing is not building bridges, it's blowing them up.
It's what I'm observing.
Yeah.
And I suspect you are too.
Yeah.
So we just have to be honest about what we observe. We have to express our concern for what may happen as a result. And those in industry, I think, have a pretty good picture on that. And then we have to lobby and convince the public and politicians that free trade's in everybody's best interest.
Is there a danger that the sustainability story ends up becoming, we went through the launch aid saga, we all remember that. Is there a danger that we end up balkanizing this process of sustainability, balkanizing the process of the next generation of aeroplanes, that there is no cooperation, and it becomes an effort that is driven by industrial policy with very domestic purposes in mind?
No, well, that's a description of an end game I have no interest in. I don't think it gets there. I really don't think it gets there. And it's with respect to this industry. We have allied nations supporting both supply sides. In my view, that will play well ultimately. We know we're going to have a competitor from China. We have a keen awareness for all of that. We should not be afraid of it. We should continue to develop technologies. I agree with Guillaume's comments completely. Just keep developing technologies the world needs and wants. Compete with the best of the best, in my case.
Yep.
That's Guillaume. He would probably say the same. We just keep trying to outdo each other, and that's where we keep running. I think a China competitor's got a long way to go on that front, measured in decades and decades, not in years.
How should government support Boeing and Airbus? How should government support the process of building the next generation of aeroplanes? How should government support the sustainability story that we're all hopefully on, the journey we're all on?
I think they have to mandate sustainability. I think we're all committed to it. So I'm not suggesting we need a slap in the face, but there are certain things that will have to happen policy-wise that create the absolute need and, more importantly, confidence that we are down that path.
Yep.
And that's all things sustainable fuel, all things sustainable aviation fuel. That's the answer that gets us even close to our objectives by 2050. So I'm in great favor of those kinds of policies, subject to the political side's understanding of what capabilities and timeframes are required to get there. And I believe we have tools across our industry. We have one we call Cascade, where you can do the math really easily, like in an hour, to figure out what policy objective will do to emissions in the next 20, 25 years. So, that's what we need to do. I don't think our industry needs financial help to develop airplanes.
Yep.
We all do fine. We have capital markets that want to support, and if anybody knows the extent to which capital markets want to step in and support our industry, it would be me, because we were in a desperate need at a desperate moment, and it came fast, and it came in a big way. So I don't think capital markets are a constraint for our industry by any stretch of the imagination. So I do think, though, on the subject of sustainability, intelligent policy will help to mandate the outcome.
You're going to Normandy in a few days' time. Is there a lesson in that? Is there something we should think about in that history? Europe and the United States? It feels like we're maybe growing apart rather than growing together. How do we think about that?
I probably would. Normandy has all kinds of meanings for me, mostly personal. My dad dropped in the 101st on the other side of the enemy line. And there's a lot of stories about how it happened, all that. My point in saying that is that story, it captures you like you can't believe. Feel like you're watching a movie. But I've never seen anything that reminded me in my time of that, what would have been that moment for him, until I saw the Russian invasion of Ukraine. That all of a sudden looked to me like, wow, that might have been a moment he went through. So for me, I want to see NATO. I want to see the support for NATO grow. I want to see the understanding of what the ramifications of a weak NATO would mean. And I never want to see a war. So I'm going to Normandy for lots of personal reasons, but I think we're in a moment. I just do. And if we don't know it, we ought to get real about it. And I think we ought to support every element of NATO, every element of NATO. I was in Poland, of course, was on the front line yesterday, all day. This is what we talk about. I've had good discussions here. We just have to understand the threat. It's real, and I think I saw a glimpse of what all of the protectors of France in this case and in Normandy faced.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dave Calhoun.
Thank you.